Hey, quickly, just to echo one of the things David just talked about, one of our values around here, one of the things we value is this idea of investing and inviting, which means you're investing in relationships in your neighborhood, at work, at school, those around you, and hopefully you're leveraging those relationships for the sake of Jesus, for the sake of the gospel. And what we want to do is provide opportunities for you to have moments where you can invite too. And next week is going to be one of those moments where I think, at Gathering Point at least, Christianity makes like the most sense. It's really easy to invite somebody who makes sense, where we're going to make an impact into the community. I just think that makes a lot of sense when you go, oh, that's what the church should be doing. That's what the church is. And next week as we start Be Rich, I just wanted you to tell that's an awesome opportunity for you to invite someone that you've been thinking about, or maybe if you're online, just coming and joining with us in that moment. You won't want to miss that. It's a lot of fun. So we're going to be doing that next week, and that'll be really exciting. So today, one of the things I want to talk about today is kind of continuing this talk that we've been talking about not just Gathering Point being a place that you watch or the place that you go online, but this idea that we do different things around here. And right now you're all in rows, right? Everyone's in rows. When you started kindergarten or even preschool, you learned in rows or quads or pockets, and you kind of are in this lecture environment, which is fine. That's a place for learning. That's a place for new information. But what we have found here at Gathering Point, and we knew this very early on, rows isn't necessarily where you grow, right? Circles are much better for growth than being in rows. And so we knew early on, everybody loves rows and there's great music in rows, but we don't grow in rows. We learn in rows, we grow in circles. And so one of the things that we have is spiritual growth is such a personal thing, right? It's a personal thing. And isn't it true that in your life, you've grown more through relationships that you have rather than messages that you've heard? Now, I realize what I just did to myself since I make a living giving messages, right? I understand what I've just said and what I've done to myself in this, and my family likes to live indoors, and so that's a good thing, and all those parts of things. But one of the things that I just want to talk about is you can take notes, and you can listen, and you can be a part, but and that's all fine, and that's great. That's a good part. But growth happens when you circle up with other people and you have vulnerable conversations and you begin to talk with one another. Now, let's be honest. Whether you come and you sit in the back row or you sit in the middle or you're a front rower, however you begin to go, and maybe you come Sunday after Sunday, or you turn on online Sunday after Sunday, and you show up Sunday after Sunday, and you kind of come, and I know I've even heard of this. Some people are taking like pictures, like I know, and I'm just calling you out online people. I've even heard some of you take pictures of your screen and crop it. Yes, university students, you crop it and then send that picture to your mom and go, yeah, Mom, I was at church today. I attended and went there, and that's fine, and I get that, and that's all part of it. But here's the thing. You can send a picture, and you can do your location on social media every week and say, this is where I'm at, and this is where I'm going, and this is where I'm at. But the life change won't happen simply by attending. It's a great first start. Because here's what we know about learning. Learning doesn't take place until you start to do it, right? How many of you, just curious, how many of you took a foreign language in high school? How many of you are still proficient in that foreign language? Oh, 3, that's awesome. Why is that? Did you not go to class? Yeah. Did you do the assignments? Yeah. Did you learn all there was to learn about that foreign language? Yes. Are you doing it? No. And what do we all know? To become proficient in a foreign language, you have to what? Speak it regularly. And this is one of the things that we get kind of lost on. I've gotten lost in my own life where we think that I need to have more in my spiritual life, and I need to grow in my spiritual life, and I need to go, have you ever heard of this? I need to go deeper in my spiritual life. And we think that has to do with knowledge. But if our Spanish teacher was here, she would say, nada, right? It's doing that begins to have something go deeper in you. I mean, knowledge has its place. You have to know what you're doing. But if you only take in knowledge and you don't practice and participate and become vulnerable, you won't do. And there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference between learning and doing. And I know that once it's much easier to learn than it is to do, because we can kind of communicate like we know what we're talking about and what we're doing by just learning, but we've not experienced anything. And so today, my goal, and what's our goal today? Well, my goal today, my mission is pretty straightforward. And if this is your first time watching online, or if this is your first time here in service, I want everyone to do one of two things here. One is, if you're in a group, you need to start meeting again. And I know you took the summer off or the pandemic off, and you had a bunch of reasons for doing that. I get that, and that's fine. If you're not in a group, I want you to think about being in a group. And then I'm going to talk really specifically about some things in your life and in my life, because it's just one of these things. But I want to just acknowledge the fact that pandemics have made everything much more difficult when it relates to connecting, communicating, being vulnerable with one another. And we want your whole family to be a part of a group. And honestly, next week, I won't be able to say it today, but next week I've got some really exciting news for our elementary school students and groups and how that whole program, there's gonna be some major good news that we'll share next week with that. Your middle schooler on Wednesday night, your high schooler on Sunday night for you. But this is a really big deal. But today, I used to think that this used to just be, and I know, so don't email me. I know what I'm about ready to say, and I know it sounds bad. But just this is what I used to think. Okay, so just put it at that. I used to think that this was just a guy issue, a man issue, that men struggled with this particular thing. But I think in the pandemic, I think it's become an everybody issue, which means it's now something we probably all should talk about this morning. And this is kind of oftentimes our resistance, and this is kind of probably something we're all struggling with, and this is kind of going to help make the point of what we want to talk about here today. But I want to talk, I don't want to just talk to specifically to guys, but I think if there's been a man or a dad or a husband or son in your life, you may understand this or have seen this. So I want to talk about this. If you've been married or engaged, you'll kind of pick up on these kinds of things. But there's some of these things that guys have a tendency to do, but I've seen women do this too in the pandemic, and I just want to talk to you about this. But this is so don't take it as stereotypical. Ready? Don't be offended. Men and now ladies, I think because of the pandemic, often have a tendency to drift towards isolation, independence, and autonomy by default. Not all men, not all women. Some of you were forced into autonomy, independence as a result of the pandemic. I think it's just sort of a natural drift as you go into your 30s and you go into your 40s and as you go into your 50, and maybe not everybody, but I think there's just a natural drift towards isolation, being independent, and sort of living autonomously. And I think it's a drift. And I think one of the things that does this, that we kind of begin to kind of peel back and kind of shirk back and kind of move back into isolation is, and here again, I'll just pick on the guys because I want to be nice to the ladies, but I'll just pick on the guys for a little bit. I think part of it is because as a guy, who do you idolize? I mean, if you're in your 40s, who do you idolize? You idolize the guy that started a business, sold his business, and now has more money than he knows what to do with, and you're like, oh man, wow. Wouldn't that be awesome? He doesn't even know what to do with it all. And he kind of does those things, and you read those stories and you hear those stories and you just kind of go, oh man, I wish I would have done that. Or why didn't I come up with that idea, right? I've thought that many times. I noticed this one guy, and he had this company and he worked for it, and he made shampoo bottles. That's what he did. I mean, loaded. I'm like, that can't be that hard, right? I mean, shampoo bottle. And there was another guy that made cardboard. He made cardboard boxes. And I was like, well, Amazon's spending trillions of dollars on cardboard. What are we could do with the cardboard? And you kind of go with this. You're like, oh, why didn't I think of that? And you begin to go that. Or maybe you're 25 years old and there's some guy that came up with this app idea, and you're still trying to figure out how to even load apps on your phone. You don't even know how it works. And you're like, this guy came up with an app and you're trying to figure out this. And now this person wrote an app and they're getting royalties off of this app that's not even that complicated. And you're like, oh my word, how did that even happen? And they're doing whatever they want to do, as long as they want to do it, with whatever they want to do it. And they're driving your dream car. They drive your dream car. They're 25. And you know what they park it next to? Your other dream car, right? And you're kind of struggling with that. And you're like, I want to be like them and I want to be like this. And so you just think, right? If I had that kind of freedom, if I had that kind of independence, if I had that kind of autonomy, why can't I be that person? And there's just a sense of autonomy, and you just kind of shirk back and you begin to go. And there's something in all of us, and we kind of hate those guys, don't we? I mean, we hate them. I mean, let's be honest, we even hate the people that drive like black cars in winter around here, because I don't know what it is. Like, there's certain people in our county, like your car has salt all over it, their car doesn't. Like, how do they do that? Like, they literally have everything. How does that happen? How do we do that? And so there's just this quest for autonomy and independence. And as over time, doesn't happen immediately, there's a little bit of recluse that begins to take place in all of us. Even those of you who are introverts begin to experience this. And I can tell you, like, my issue, and part of my issue, since maybe you can relate to this, at some point we get to a stage in our life where it feels like everybody just wants something from us. You ever experienced that? Like, it feels like a lot of your conversations, I mean, I've experienced this. I've gone through ruts where you just kind of just want to hide for a while, because it seems like every time you go out, somebody wants something or needs something, and that can kind of have a wear on you, and it creates this isolation, and that's not healthy. It's not healthy, but we kind of feel like, oh man. So we can get into these situations in life, and we can get into situations at work, and we can get into these situations at home, that the people that you want to spend time with, you just start to find reasons and excuses to kind of just hang back. And maybe you don't have this, and maybe it's, it's not that you're not happy with yourself, it's just simpler to kind of retreat a little bit, but you don't call it that. You call it, I just want to be in a safe place. I just want to, be alone. And then COVID hit, right? And you can tell me I'm wrong. That's fine. That's okay. And then COVID hit, and all of a sudden, it just felt like life was easier by yourself. You didn't like it. You missed people. But you figured out a way to do life with less people and more Netflix, or less people and more social media, and less people and more pickup service and drive-through service. And I'm not like, this isn't like, Paul, why are you hammering us? I'm not. Are you guilty of it? Oh, my Lord, start with me. Yeah, for sure. If I never go back into Walmart again, I'll be fine. When they have those little things and you go up and Aaron's like, hey, can you stop by Walmart on the way home? Now I used to say, now I say, absolutely. Hit the app, boom. Pop the trunk, drop it in. Yeah, I have a problem. I'm not yelling at you. I got the mirror squarely at myself as well. But what we have to do is we have to stop for a minute and realize that this has had an impact on our drive for community. Because we've just kind of taken a step back, and there will be consequences, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, because there are things that are growing around us and in us that maybe we haven't been very attentive to, because we've kind of decided that it's okay to be autonomous and independent and kind of a little bit reclusive. And if we're not careful, we've got to push back from that and say, I'm not going to get drawn into that. I'm not going to get sucked into that. I'm not going to be a part of that. That's why I think for some of you, and I was talking to the guys, I think you probably just need to decide you're going to go to man camp. I don't want to go to man camp. I know. I realize that. You probably don't, but you should. Why? I don't know anybody else there. Right, that's the point. Well, but it might be weird. Probably will be, okay? Well, what are we going to do? I don't know. They said they were throwing axes. Well, I don't like to throw axes. I don't either, but I've never done it. That's why I don't know if I like it or not. Well, what if I can't do it? I don't know. And these are the reasons and things that we want to do this fall, because what we've noticed in myself and what I've noticed in you is you weren't even aware, but you just started doing this a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. And then it's like, put your mask back on. And what's that? You just a little bit more here and a little bit more here. And there has been something that's been growing while you've been retreating. I'm not retreating. I know. It wasn't your strategy. I get that. It's just kind of been a consequences. And the reason is isolation over time, and you not be aware of this, but isolation over time becomes a bully. Isolation over time becomes a bully. And it becomes very difficult, if you're not intentional, to stand up to that bully. Because now, isn't it true? I know it's true in me. And I was looking at myself this week. I've got more excuses, good ones. I've got more excuses than ever in my tool belt to step back from people. And I can use politics or vaccines or masks. I can use safety. I can use a million different reasons to say I need to say no. And there has been a bully that's bullying you into living that way. And so this morning, I want to start off with something that you're going to do what? Something that I was reading earlier this week, and honestly, it was just for me, and I feel like I just kind of want to share this with you this week, is there's this story in the Bible, and you've all heard about it, right? You've all heard about this story, and it's the story of Goliath and David, right? And here's what I started noticing when I started reading about this story of Goliath and David, and it's found in 1 Samuel chapter 17. If you have your app, you can look it up. If not, you can look on the screens, or it'll be on the bottom third of your screen at home if you're watching there. And there's this thing that happens in this, and we learn a lot about bullies. We learn a lot about giants. We learn a lot about intimidation. We learn a lot about how giants come down through this story. But the reality is, first we have to identify who is the bully. Who's the giant? Who's holding me back? Who am I intimidated by? Why am I afraid of doing something? Why do I keep retreating? Why do I keep going back? And we begin to learn something here from the life of Israel and the life of David, like so often we do when we go to the Old Testament. So the Philistines had occupied, verse 3, the Philistines had occupied one hill, and the Israelites another with the valley between them, and a champion named Goliath. Now here's what I started thinking about Goliath. Do you think Goliath was born a giant? I mean, he may have been a 9-pounder. He may have been a 10-pounder. I don't know. They didn't say anything about his mama, right? I don't know how big he was, but he was a baby. You know what they did to him? They fed him. And they made sure he slept. And then all of a sudden he was a toddler. You think he was an intimidating toddler? Probably not. Then he was an adolescent. That may have been intimidating. They're ferocious. And then he got older, and he kept growing, and he kept feeding him. And over time, a giant developed, but he didn't start off as a giant. He wasn't intimidating at all. And then all of a sudden, chapter 4, it says he was from Gath, and he came out of the Philistine camp, and his height was 6 cubits and a span. Translation, he's huge. Some people say 9 feet, big. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp, and his height was 6 feet and all that. And Goliath stood head and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Hey, why don't you come out?" And he taunts them. They taunt you. "Why don't you come out? Why don't you go in? Why don't you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? Are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man. Come on, pick somebody. Let's go. Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he's not able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you'll become our subjects and you will serve us." And this is the crazy thing about bullies, whether they're at work, whether they're at home, whether they're in your head, whether it's just something you don't want to deal with anymore. They have the ability to get in our heads, and we hear them over and over and over and over, why we should not be with other people for 40 days. this giant, this bully. For 40 days, the Philistine came forward every morning. I'm going to do it today. I'm going to do it today. I'm going to do it today. No, I'm not. Today's the day. Today's the day. Today's the day. Today. No. I'm gonna. No, that's going to be embarrassing. I don't think this is a bad idea. This is a terrible idea. 40 days. 40 days. They came forward, and every evening, and they took a stand. And early in the morning, we have this little boy named David. David left his flock in care of his shepherd, and he loaded up to set out as Jesse had directed his dad. And he reached the camp as the army was going out into the battle position, shouting the war cry. And David left his things, all of his things, his keeper of the supplies, ran into the battle lines and asked his brother where they are. And as he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance. Isn't it true that the voices in our head say the same thing every day? To you, or about somebody that you work with, right? Every day you hear, I don't want to see that person because they'll say, have they said it yet? No, but I know what they'll say. I know what they're thinking. I know how they really feel, right? It's all in our head. And David heard it. And whenever the Israelites saw the man, every time the bully showed up, every time the giant showed up, they all fled. Great fear, big fear. Gadol fear. But David said to Saul, hey, your servant, I've just been out there keeping your father's sheep. And here's the thing I've learned about, here's the things that I've learned about the things that creep up in my life, the things that try to overcome me, the things that try to tell me, whoa, run and hide. It's not worth it. This is what I found. So when there's a lion show up, or when a bear comes and carries off one of my sheep, I go after him. Well, good for you. Struck it, and then I rescued the sheep from its mouth. And when it turned to me, I just seized it by its hair. I'm sorry, you did what? You grabbed a bear by the hair? You grabbed a lion by the mane? Then what'd you do? I killed it. What are you, 16? Come on now, you're not even shaven. So your servant has killed both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of the Philistine. And Israel's response is my response, and it's your response. Yeah, but I don't want to. I would rather not engage. I would rather just kind of shirk back. I'd rather just not be bothered at my desk. I'd rather just watch TV and have no one talk. I'd rather just be alone to my phone. So Saul says, the king says, hey, why don't we get you some new clothes? After that, verse 38, Saul dressed him with his own tunic, puts the coat of the king on him, puts the armor of the king and the bronze helmet on his head. And David put on the king's sword and the tunic, and he tried walking around because he's not used to them, right? So you got a teenager wearing a huge king's equipment, and he can't move around them. And he looks at him and he goes, look, I can't go in these. He said to Saul, because I'm not used to them. So he took them off. I can't fight in your battle. I can't do it the way you do it. He took off his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in his pouch of the shepherd's bag, and with his sling hand he approached the Philistine, and he said to David, he goes out to the big, huge Goliath Philistine who's been taunting him and saying, look, go back, retreat, you can't come out here, don't do this. And he looked at him and he goes, seriously, you brought a boy out here to do a man's job? What do you think, I'm a dog? That makes no sense to me because if it was my dog would just lick you to death, so I don't understand that, but apparently that's a bad thing, I don't know. He said to the dog, am I a dog that you come out with me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Come here, he said, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animal. And it's intimidation after intimidation. And these voices, isn't it true that voices in our head during the pandemic, when we get isolated, when I'm isolated, and when you're isolated, and when you don't have honest conversations with your employees, and when you don't have honest conversations with your boss, and when you don't have honest conversations at home, and when you don't have honest conversation with your friends, and the Philistine moved closer to attack him, and David ran quickly towards him. Reaches into his bag, takes out a stone, he slew it, and struck the Philistine on the forehead, and the stone sank into his forehead. There's a visual. And he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. And so here's what I want to talk to you real quick about this in your life. And it may not be that you're you find yourself being reclusive and you find yourself not wanting to be with other people, and it may not be that, but I guarantee at some point you probably have a giant in your life. And it talks to you every day, and it's intimidating you, and as a result of it, you shrink back, and it's prohibiting you from being all that God wants you to be. And here's what we know about giants. Giants only grow when we feed them. Do you know how to feed a giant? I found in my own life that giants in my life grow when I don't talk about them, when I choose to ignore it, when I assume that it'll just go away on its own if I just give it some more time. I've noticed giants grow in my life when I'm afraid of them, and I assume that nothing will change. I think when we assume and when we avoid and we just kind of hide under the covers, that's all the ways that giants grow. I think we can even have giants grow when we're like, well, I'm just going to pray it away. I'm not going to talk to it, but I'm just going to pray, God, why don't you kill the giant? But that's not what happened in the story that we just read. God was involved for sure, but David had to move towards the giant first. I think giants grow when we self-medicate. And by self-medicating, I think that's anything we do to keep our minds occupied so we don't have to think about that or them. And so you know what I'm learning in my life? Because I found myself, and maybe you found yourself this way, and for some of you, you're like, this is way too personal, Paul. Okay, well, I'm sorry. I've thought for a long time that during this pandemic and this season right now that what I've needed is more vacation time, right? How many of you think you need a vacation? Maybe you need me to sign a form and send it to work tomorrow. I think we all should have more vacation time, right? Let's have some more. You need a break. But you know what I found this week that I think is something I need more than a vacation time? I need more time in my life to be honest. To be honest with how I'm really doing. To be honest with how things really are. To be honest with how I'm actually feeling. That's hard for me. But I'm tired of the giants. I'm tired of feeding the giants. I'm tired of the bullies. Is there an actual bully in your life, Paul? No. There are things that I've just assumed would go away or pretended or tried to just think that it'll be okay. Or maybe you bought into this lie. I'm a subscriber to this one. Well, this pandemic's got to be just about over. We can make it another week. I bought that subscription last year. It turned out to be a pretty expensive subscription, right? Because here's what we know. If the giants aren't confronted, they will continue to grow. And the giants will continue to grow if no one has access to you, the real you. If no one has access to your heart, the giants will grow. If no one has access to the details of your heart and your life, you'll probably do something stupid. Because autonomy is a myth. Autonomy is a trap. Autonomy is an unworthy goal. Autonomy is not the way that God created you, because God didn't create you for autonomy. He created you for community. So here's what I want to do. I'm not mad at you. I'm concerned for you because I'm concerned for me. And I know there's some things in my life that I've got to change. And one of those is I've got to get more honest about how I'm actually doing. not what I think other people want me to say. So, are you willing? And I'm asking myself the same question. Are you willing to allow people that don't work for you and people that don't need anything from you access to you? Are you willing to do that? Because that's never going to happen on your screen or your phone, no matter how many times you watch. It's not going to happen in this row, no matter how many times you come and you attend. But are you willing to step in and allow someone access to your life? And let me just tell you, there will be a giant that will tell you that's the worst idea you've ever had. That's not what you need. You just need to get stronger. Okay, how's that working out for you? But for the sake of the people that you say you love the most, I want you to not spend another season disconnected, because I don't want to spend another season disconnected. The Apostle Paul really says this so much better than I can, and he says it in Colossians chapter 3. In chapter 3, verse 14, he says, I want you to bear with one another and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against one another, someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you, and over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. And when we don't move towards the giants, there's this low-level anger and frustration that's just beneath the surface. And for me, it will show up in stupid places and stupid times. Because community is designed to be life-giving, and it's essential to following Christ. And Scripture says we're better together than we are alone. So, to close this morning, I want to introduce you to Elizabeth, who's someone that decided it was time to face the giants, and she moved towards community rather than away from it. Listen to her story.
I'm Elizabeth. I've been a member here of GatheringPoint for the past 2 years, and I was very apprehensive to come here, only for the fact that I'd fallen pretty far away from the church after high school, and I'd been invited many, many times over the years to come here, and I just felt like the minute I walked in the door, somebody was going to look at me and think, oh, she has a past. We know about her past. Why is she here? I was very, very nervous for that reason. But I eventually said yes to my good friend Donna Jones, who invited me to join Summertime at the Movies, and it was a wonderful experience. I felt very welcomed and very loved and very supported from the second I walked in the door, regardless of whatever past I had behind me. And so I found my way over to Pastor Dane and Teresa at the guest services table. I was scared to death. I was hiding behind this big giant purse, and I didn't really know what to do. And the love and support that I felt immediately from Pastor Dane and his wife, they had explained all of my options as far as next steps and what I could do. And so eventually I took a baby step, is what I call it, a little baby next step, and I joined a short-term small group. It was done online, and that was probably the best decision I could have made, just because it got me comfortable with a group setting and sort of sharing my story a little bit more. And from then, I decided to take a bigger next step and join Celebrate Recovery on Tuesday nights. And that has been amazing. I've been doing that for the past 6 months, and it's just been, it's been fantastic. I felt so loved and supported and understood, and it's given me a safe place to come to work through the issues that I still work through every day. It's never done. But the relationship with the other women in my group has just been life-changing, truly.
As we close, I want you to get out your phones this morning. And I want us to do something. I want us to stop listening, and I want us to have a plan to move forward. And here's what I know about me, and here's what I know about you. You may not have had a good plan for your life before the pandemic. And so your strategy for after the pandemic looks a lot like what you did before, only at a higher level and more intensity, and I want to do something different. We want to call a timeout here. So we're going to put a QR code on the screen. If you have a phone, take this. If not, you can go to the app, and at the bottom of the app, you have this. It's called My Recovery Plan. What I want us all to do this week is to take some time and each day, starting today, go one day at a time, and I want you to print it off or whatever you need to do. And I want you to go through this recovery plan because it's going to talk about where you are physically and spiritually and emotionally and relationally, and it's going to give you a baseline. It's going to give you a baseline for where you are, and it will help you develop a strategy to move forward so that the giants in our lives don't keep calling us back to a place that God never intended us to be. These QR codes will be around the building as you leave today. So can I pray with you as we go? Jesus, help us to stand today and move towards that which is calling us into fear and shame and hiding. And help us to live the way that you've asked us to live. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Thanks so much for joining us at Gathering Point. If this is your first time, be sure to text GPGuest to 97000. And be sure to hit like and subscribe so you can be the first to know about everything happening here at Gathering Point. Have a great week.